podcast contains potentially adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly sexual context. Listener discretion is advised. Okay, welcome to Drinking with Authors. Woo! There's an entire audience track that's now put on this. My producer found it, so I keep talking about it, but it's really funny to see it live. Okay, so we Drinking with Authors. I'm your host, Erica Lance. With me today is
Vanessa Valiente.
And our guest today is Barb Jones. Yay! Okay, let's talk a little bit about what we're drinking. So I am drinking ginger. I may have already had a shot. Okay. Ginger whiskey from one of our Drinking with Authors cups. We'll send you one of these, Barb. And it's mixed with AHA sparkling peach and honey.
Ooh,
this is what happens awesome. When you're in COVID and you go into your fridge. That's what happens. Okay. Vanessa, what are you drinking today?
I am drinking Warsteiner. It is a German beer. I've never had it before, so I'll let you know how it is by the end of this podcast. But yay!
Okay, Barb, what are you drinking along with us today?
Water for right now until the beer finishes chilling.
Yes, no, that's important. Warm beer is never a good thing unless you're drunk enough not to notice. So, for the audience, can you tell them a little bit about what you write?
Well, I write a variety of things, but my biggest series is the Blood Prophecy series. It's a paranormal thriller.
Ooh.
So it combines a little bit of everything in terms of the supernatural. I also write children's series, so small children fiction, and I write poetry. And then I write a bunch of just like short papers on different topics. I do a lot of speaking engagements in addition to the daytime job.
Wow. So you're prolific and busy. Those are two things busy. Not every author can claim to be. So that's what every author wants to be. So what got you started writing? When did you start? When did you begin? Let's go back in time.
Let's see. Going back in time, I would say growing up in Hawaii, I was about 9 years old in the 4th grade. And I would always tell stories. And my parents encouraged it, and I had a language arts teacher in the 4th grade that just encouraged me to take the stories that I would verbally tell and put it down on paper. And so from there, it just started with the storytelling, the poetry, you name it. And I just loved writing.
Very, very cool. So what was your first actual published work? Like, besides in the classroom, what was your first... your first published work?
Probably with the newspapers in Hawaii. They had usually a little column for young writers, and you could submit poetry and short stories, and I just started that with the help of a teacher.
Did you start out with poetry being like the first thing you ever tried writing, or did you actually write full stories, full length
stories? And then poetry was just a way she encouraged to get my feelings across. Because I was a shy child.
Wow. No authors are shy anymore. I don't know. An author has to talk in public. So when did you publish your first book? Like your first novel or children's book?
That would probably be with the Blood Prophecy 1, Queen's Destiny. And around that time, I also published the children's series, Arthur and Merlin.
Ooh.
Oh.
Okay.
Little Arthur, actually.
Little Arthur. Merlin story. So the Blood Prophecy, let's talk about how that came into being. Where did you come up with it? What made you, what was the inspiration behind the Blood Prophecy? I want to say blood as many times as I can in this paragraph. So blood prophecy.
It started as a dream.
Ooh, very Stephanie Meyer-ish kind of inspiration.
It's kind of weird. It was just, I love reading paranormal, but I just got kind of bored with what was out there. And it's like one night, my mind was just overworked and I just went to sleep, and it's like I started just dreaming. And that kind of formed the storyline of Queen's Destiny.
What was
first
the
book.
image? What was like the image that you dreamt that kind of sparked the whole story?
Basically it was demons. It wasn't the vampire.
It was demons.
Demons.
Demons and Macedonian art.
Mm.
And it was like, just like, kind of like a prophecy from there.
Okay.
And from there emerged the Vampire Queen.
Ooh.
As it should. Just as it should. Vampire Queens. How long? Okay, so you have this dream, and then you're like, I've got to get this out. How long did it take you to write the first one?
The first one, probably about 4 to 6 months.
Wow.
And how many words do you think that first draft, that very first draft, like how many words was it?
It was over 80,000.
Oh, wow. That's pretty good, because sometimes people tend to like undercut their first draft. At least I only speak for myself, because I always feel like my first drafts are like very bare bones, and then I have to go back and like add like the meat to it. Like I feel like my first drafts are like 60,000. So that's actually pretty great that you are able to write a pretty great hefty draft.
It's very wordy and verbose because I like to describe things. And the one thing about the series that stands out is it kind of jumps in time. So it goes through past historical events that somehow relate to a current character and the prophecy. So it kind of unites the past and the present, and then looking towards the future.
That sounds like research.
It is.
So how much research? I was like, for somebody who writes modern day, I'm like, that sounds like a lot of research. So how much research did you do for the book?
A lot. For all of the books. I love to research. So it's like one of my hobbies is also researching the family tree. And so just love research. I'm just one of those weirdos. I just go on the internet and just love to look things up and love to find books and all sorts of stuff.
Is there like a specific time period that you just love reading or researching about?
It kind of varies. It depends on the topic. So like European history, I love pretty much anything with King Arthur or King Henry VIII and the Seventh. They don't give the Seventh a lot of attention, but I love to read about him. I love Russian
history. He didn't kill nearly as many people as the 8th, so he's not as sensationalized.
I don't know. The War of the Roses was still a pretty interesting time period because I mean, did you ever watch like White Princess and the White Queen and all that? Like I'm obsessed. And it actually, I agree with you. They don't give enough attention to, King Henry VIII's father and everything like that. So those shows were great to kind of highlight those time periods because a lot of bad things happened, a lot of craziness. Oh, yeah.
Well, and they don't realize that a lot of it is the financial, the way he spent his money for King Henry VII. He was very frugal. Unlike, King Henry VIII was more lavish. But they don't pay attention. Like, a lot of their, their revenue and their profit started with how King Henry VII was very frugal. And he wanted to, basically take Europe to the next step.
And then King Henry VIII ruined all of that.
They just like beheaded them.
He's like, and we're done with that. Moving on. So, when you went to write, you said that you were kind of getting over the way a lot of the paranormal and stuff was written. So you go to write a vampire book, which, is sort of the paranormal, a lot of the series and stuff have. How did you approach it differently so that you didn't have sparkly vampires, for instance?
I basically looked at the way they really truly are. They are supposed to be vicious and carnal. And so when I described like a vampire attack, I would really kind of pour it out there, like the ripping of the flesh and the shredding and the bloodletting. And, same thing like with werewolves, you have the claws, you have fangs, witches have power. They can control the elements. So I brought out their true nature. and didn't get into the whole sparkly thing or walk in daylight thing.
No,
More like Anne Rice, right?
Or yes.
No, I think that's amazing because I think when you're writing on a topic, well, one, you've done a lot of research, which is phenomenal. And I think it's really important for authors to know how important research is. Valerie, one of the authors that works with us, like you, loves to research. Right? You loves it. But I think not a lot of authors do enough research when they're talking about something that actually legitimately happened. If you're making up your own world, that's fine. But if you're talking about something that legitimately happened in the past, you should probably look up some facts, on more than Wikipedia. Not that Wikipedia is bad, but on what happened.
Oh, yeah. That's why it's like if I bring in legends or I bring in stories about gods or, what have you, I'll get out the necessary books. I'll go to the bookstores. I'll go wherever I need to go. Like, for example, Blood Prophecy 4, the fourth book that I'm writing. That's taking the group from Seattle to Hawaii. And I'm going to be bringing in like the Hawaiian legends, and me being part Hawaiian, I have that at my disposal on top of, I use books like Edith Hamilton wrote a book about mythology. She wrote several of them. And so I'll use that to talk about gods and different periods. Or I'll use, books on the World Atlas and world history events and things like that.
Very cool. So let's talk about your characters a little bit. Okay. Who's your favorite character of your characters, by the way?
I like them all. But I would probably say as I've written them, it's kind of changed from at first when I wrote it in the beginning. I really loved Amber. She's the vampire queen. She has a little bit of everything in her bloodline to make her the queen and to unite all the races. But as the series kind of morphed on, I began to like Zeraquel, who is the avenging angel, the daughter of a vampire and a witch. And she was used just to kind of bring in together and tie in the prophecy. So she became one of my favorites as I wrote Queen's Ascension, which is the third book. But now that I'm writing the fourth book, it's like it's changing again. So it's hard to say if I have an absolute favorite, but as of right now, I would say it's probably Zeraquel because of the powers that she's developed and the powers that I'm going to give her in the next set of books.
See, I love whenever I have a character that is snarky, those always tend to be like my favorite because then you can get like really creative with like their dialogue. Oh, yeah. So did any of them have like really specific personality quirks and you're like, oh, this is the best? Probably,
they all have a little bit of snarkiness. Mm-hmm. Zeraquel, as of right now in the series, she is a teenager. And so you have the teenager woes, there's the love, there's the anger, I hate my parents mood. And it's like, she wants to dive into magic and she wants to blow things up. She wants to rescue her friends. So it's a little bit of everything from a teenager's point of view. But she definitely has an attitude, a little bit of snarkiness. Chloe, she is one of the witches and she is the most powerful witch in the world. And she has a lot of snarkiness and it basically, a no shit, I don't care attitude. She'll do what it takes. I would like
her the best. Do you ever find it, what's interesting is, as writers, we get to create and change our characters, but are there any characters for you that are hard to write?
There was one. And just because I didn't know where I wanted to take him. And unfortunately, he is one of the main characters because he is Michael and he is the love of Amber. And he has a dark past and he wants to do good. So it was hard to figure out where I wanted to take him. And sadly, he had a different destination in mind in book 3.
So your characters, would you consider that you end up with, okay, nope, I'm going to start at the first question I should ask there. Yay, 4 shots of ginger whiskey. When you go to write, are you a plotter? How do you write? Like, let's start with, you're going to write book 4. How does it begin?
I just sit and write.
Ugh.
I cannot outline.
I'm in awe of all you pantsers out there, Erica. You're one of them. I can't go fully unscripted.
But you know what the funny part is? I will write anywhere a thought comes to mind. So, and I've had this like through other interviews and everything. I have written on a date before.
Was a date that bad?
No, he was just like, "You're doing what?" I'm like, "Do you have paper and pen on you?" And he's like, "No." And I'm like, "Don't worry, I'll be right back." I ran out to my car, got my laptop, moved the Play-Doh, right there in a restaurant.
That's awesome.
Oh my God, you have to appreciate. So this is my entire outline for my next book right there. It's right on this one page. It drives Vanessa and everybody else is like a plotter or a planter, and I'm like, look, I wrote the title and some stuff down, and then I'm going to write the entire book based on that notepad right there.
I mean, I've done notes on napkins. Don't get me wrong. There have been moments where, I mean, napkins. I remember like way back when I was in college, I was a server, and like I would, in between like taking orders, I would have like slips of paper and I would write dialogue, and people were like, "What the heck are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, nothing. I'm just hiding it in between the bills."
Yeah. Oh, I've done that. I've even done it like while at the gym. I could be working out at the gym and I'm like, "Oh, you know what? Got to stop the set." And everybody looks at me like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm writing."
True dedication to the craft. I do a lot of voice memos. Not that they make sense, but there's a ton of voice memos in my phone.
Oh yeah, I do that too.
I'm actually
no apps on the iPhone are the
a little
best.
afraid if somebody ever does an investigation on me and like pulls the voice memos from my phone, because I'm like, figure out how long it would take a body to decompose outside and blah blah. Hopefully, I'll never be linked to a murder. That would be terrible. So you pants it, which is amazing. How long does it take you like to write? If you have time, how much can you get done like in a couple hours, or do you just dedicate X amount of time? Or
I tend to be very structured with my schedule, but I usually dedicate about 1 to 2 hours a night to just writing, and I'll see how long that takes me. So sometimes I can get a chapter done, sometimes I can get several done. It all depends on how fast it just flows.
Do you, like, when you do those sessions, because everyone's kind of different, like, do you find success as saying, okay, I spent 2 hours in some format working on writing, or do you say it's not a successful session unless I have like a certain word count, or how do you measure your progress to help make sure that you're staying motivated and pushing forward?
As long as I can guarantee, like I've written, several significant scenes to take the books forward, then to me that's successful. Because sometimes I'll start to write and then I'll go back and I was like, okay, let's add some more, change it. And, I don't worry about that too much. But as long as I've gotten a couple of scenes in, that tells me I'm successful. Because sometimes my scenes can go pretty lengthy depending upon what part or what is going on in that scene. Especially the fight scenes.
So going back, when did you go, you know what, I'm going to publish a book. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to publish books or stuff, because a lot of people write and some people do different things and come into and out of wanting to do it. But when did you go, that's it, I'm doing it?
Probably when I just realized, growing up, I was like, I always have this bucket list of things I want to do. And it was one of those things. I wanted to be an author of a series that people would just like, and it would be different. And it was on the bucket list. So it's like,
and you check. Are you traditionally published, self-published? How are you published?
I am published with World Castle, with Karen Fuller. And I love them. They are great.
That is awesome to hear, because 99% of the time that is not what people are saying about the publisher. So.
I think it depends on personalities. You've got to make sure it's a good fit. But you also got to look at it as, can you relate to them? So like, for example, with Karen, and she owns World Castle. It's like, we're even Facebook friends, you know. She's friends with the authors. She's dedicated to their success.
Yeah, I think that also depends on your, like, if your vision of how, like, you want to visualize your career matches up with what they're offering too.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has to be with, you know,
Correct.
no matter which route you go to, you have to make sure your goals align with the method that you're trying to accomplish those goals. Because if not, it's just like any working relationship, you know, if you guys aren't on the same page, then you're going to have that conflict. Yeah. And that's awesome that you have such a, you know, an amazing relationship with your publisher.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's great. I've seen some out there that I was like, you know, 10 feet away. No. But, you know, with her, it's just been very easy. It's very, very nice. She's always helpful. You name it.
Very cool. No, we love hearing that because, again, not often do we hear it. So you get published, and then what was that journey like for you? How long did it take you from when you were like, here's the book, to actually getting the first one out the door?
It depends on her editing schedule. So, you know, like, for example, I just submitted to her a little bit ago, actually, pretty much right after Queen's Ascension was released. I had just submitted another novella of one of the characters in the series. So that's in queue to be edited, and editing doesn't take very long. And then I have an amazing designer who does all my covers. So it's not like a pre-made cover, but he does the artwork.
Do you do like feedback? Like, do you give them like an idea of what you're looking for? Do they take your, wow, not many people have lucky.
Yeah, with Steven, it's like a perfect relationship. I describe to him what the story is about, and I just let him go. And if you've seen like the cover for Queen's Ascension, that's like his most phenomenal work out of all of my covers.
Beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. So did you have an idea in mind on how long you wanted this series to go, or did you just go, I'm going to write a series?
I did, and that's the shocker to everybody. It was going to end with Queen's Ascension because I thought it just brought everything full circle, right? But listening to the fans, and I get a lot of emails from the fans, and some of them even like personally Facebook me on, like they friend me on Facebook, for example, on my personal page and not the book page. And so I'll accept it and I'll talk to them. I mean, I've had so many wish me a happy birthday in September. And they were just like, I don't want the series to end. And I just listened to them. I'm like, well, you know what? Maybe it won't end. So I came up with the next trilogy set, which is book 4, 5, and 6.
Oh, that's great.
I think it's funny you bring that up in a way, because this is something I talk about as writers. You know, you can get driven by the fans. Sometimes you can get driven by the production company. Like, talked to a writer recently, and she wrote a true life. She was a CIA agent, ex-CIA agent, and she wrote a true life book about extraction from Libya during a conflict, right? And she was like, I'm going to write dystopian young adult books. And her agent was like, no, you're going to write spy novels. Like, because that's what he was like, you need to write strong female-led spy novels, is what our agent said. And it's not that she was like disheartened by it, but I think it's interesting because you can go, you know what, this is a trilogy and I love this. And then the fans can come back and go, I need more. You need to give me more of this. Or your publishing company can go, I want to have more of this situation because it sells well. And then there's a point where you as an author have to go, yes, I feel like I can create this, or now I'm just doing it like a job because it's there.
Yeah.
Well, I guess what
I had to correct anything because of potentially ending it in book 3 when you went into book 4?
No, it's just going to pick up because the battle between good and evil will never end in the world. So I found a way to kind of keep it going because the battle will never end. And there's actually going to be, in the storyline, it talks about 3 specific battles. So there was a battle in the beginning of time, and the current battle, which is the Blood Prophecy series, took book 1, 2, and 3, and then there's going to be a 3rd final battle that nobody.
What happens when the fans ask for book 7, though?
I think I'm gonna have to change and make a spinoff.
Prepare for the spin-off.
Yeah, I think it's like, do you feel like as much as you want to please your fans, you also want to make sure whatever you're creating in itself is a strong story idea, right? So you're definitely in the, like, how do you feel about that? Making sure you're not only catering in a sense to your fans, but you also want to make sure you're producing quality work, because then you get situations where you're pumping out books and, you know, and sometimes you'll see like, why do they continue the story? It doesn't feel as strong as the original thing that you fell in love with. So do you feel like you have to have a really good, strong grip on the next story before you commit to something else in that same world?
I already do where 4, 5, and 6 will go, and then that'll be the end.
Okay.
And then hopefully then I will turn my attention to another series I want to start, which is more about Scotland.
Ooh. I like that.
What kind of story in Scotland?
You can't go wrong with Scotland.
There are kilts in Scotland. I am intrigued.
Basically just more of like a historical fiction.
Oh, okay. So this will be like brand new or within...
Brand new.
Ooh, okay.
That, and then I'm also toying with the idea of kind of a King Henry series, but more with Anne of Cleves.
Ooh.
Because not a lot is done about Anne of Cleves.
No. I think the only time I ever really knew anything about her was like the brief moment she was on the, like, if you watch The Tudors. With, yeah, like, and like you felt so bad for her because he was so mean. And you're just like, she needs some love.
Well, he was mean to her because he wasn't attracted to her. But the funny part is out of all the women, she was one of them that he had the most respect for. That's why they named her the king's sister, the highest regard they could possibly give a woman who was married to him. And that's why they favored her as the king's sister.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, someone needs to write her love story. Like, even though it's not historically accurate, someone needs to like give her a happy ending.
Well, because, you know, they do have speculations, and, you know, according to a lot of the history documents that you can find in Europe, you know, there was speculation that maybe they had a secret child.
Ooh.
Do we all feel where this is going? Dun, dun, dun.
I hope
this is what you're gonna do, because I would read that in a heartbeat.
Like Vanessa's writing, follow up with Barb to see where it
I'm
goes.
gonna stalk you now. I'll be like, where's this book?
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with Drinking with Authors.
This is the voice of Drinking with Authors. You are at our commercial break, and our commercial is, hey, do you want to be a guest on our show? Or do you have a question for one of the guests on our show? Or do you have a brilliant drink recipe that we've never heard of? That would have to stump us. But you could reach us at drinkingwithauthors@gmail.com or on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. You can direct message or even just leave a comment on one of our posts. We would absolutely love to hear from you.
And we're back. Okay. Back with beer. I love this.
Yeah, Barb, you gotta tell us, what are you drinking?
What are you drinking now?
Belgian White Blue Moon.
Woo!
I
Blue
love
Moon. I love Blue Moon.
I love Blue Moon mainly because I can put oranges in it too. I'm a big fan of putting accoutrements in my beer. It's ridiculousness. Okay, so let's talk about your children's series for a minute, because that's different. So you have a King author. So tell us about your children's series.
Well, my son is 15 now, but when he was 5, he loved kings, queens, and knights like any typical 5-year-old little boy. And his sister is 4 years older. And she was already reading, you know, the Camelot series and the big, thick Arthur books. And he was so disheartened being a little kindergartner. He was like, I want to read King Arthur, but it's so big and too many words. So I said, give me a few minutes. And I got on the phone with a friend who did the illustrations for the books. And I came up with Little Arthur and Merlin the Magnificent.
Oh.
And King Arthur and Merlin are actually 5-year-old little boys. So the first book, they meet the baby dragon and they named him Pendragon. So it's like a preschool kindergarten way of introducing King Arthur and the characters. And then like
great.
the second book, for example, Meet the Knights, has a bunch of little boys playing, and Arthur and Merlin want to join them. And through one of the father's knights, they learned to make a round table and they became friends, and that's an introduction to the knights. So it kind of, it's a very innocent way of introducing preschoolers to King Arthur and Merlin.
In kind of like a digestible way where it just makes sense, but you
Innocent way.
yeah, and you make it your own, but it's a way for them to kind of understand the different elements that make
Correct. And the
that's
characters.
awesome.
You know, I didn't get it, you know, so that's that series. And he just fell in love with it. And actually, my friend made little Arthur kind of from a picture of my son, Caden, that I sent him. And I said, okay, so then, you know, when you got to meet, you know, Guinevere and everything, got to make the little girl. So here's my daughter's picture.
Oh,
This is so cute. So how many books are in that series now?
Pardon?
How many books in that
That one
series?
has 2, because I tied it up all in 2 for them to introduce the whole characters. And then, but I do a lot of, like, the daycares, I'll do a lot of preschool readings with it. And the kids just seem to love it.
Oh, I would think so. Totally. Who doesn't want to be a hero knight or a magician? I love the Arthur. Oh my God, I almost said author. Whatever. Okay, I'm fine. I'm fine. Drinking. Okay, so
Need another drink.
I do not think that's a good idea. Just kidding. Okay, so let's talk a little bit when your writing process. Do you write anywhere, which I love. Do you like having music? Do you like having the noise around you when you write in different things? Is it helpful or?
If I'm sitting in my office or, you know, something, I'll listen to Nickelback or something, or Metallica. Do I need the noise all the time? No, but sometimes it helps, because it's like the energy you get from music kind of just helps me just keep on going.
Do you have a playlist? A lot of authors now are doing playlists and then posting their playlists on like Spotify and stuff like that for their books. Do you do that?
I don't necessarily have a playlist. I'll just listen to Nickelback most of the time.
oh,
Wow. I don't think a lot of authors, I don't know any authors who've ever told me they listen to Nickelback. Normally that is an ongoing joke about Nickelback, but is it the motivation because they're very revved up?
Probably that, and one of my favorite bands. The other one I'll listen to is probably like I'll listen to Mindless Self-Indulgence.
yeah, I listen to a lot of that trailer music because that really, especially when I like write a lot of fantasy, so it's a great way to kind of get into the mood, into especially battle scenes. So I always find those tend to be like my favorite go-to songs. Is anything like 2 Steps from Hell, Thomas Bergerson, you know, just to name like a couple. But yeah, that's awesome that you have like a go-to band that you like.
That is very cool. Now let's talk about author community. Wow, I'm going to give this very carbonated beverage so many points today in launching me into drug pill. Yay! So author, I probably put too much whiskey in this. Okay. Author friends, like author community. Do you have a group of writing friends? Do you have anybody like that you?
I will talk periodically with different ones, but not necessarily where I'll hang out and like toss ideas back and forth. I kind of just, to me, my writing is a little bit more personal. I just sit there and just do it anywhere. Like I said, I'll do it on dates even. But it's just, I don't really get out like in an author community, say I belong to this or go to a writing workshop.
Have you done any of those?
I've done a couple and just realized they weren't really me.
What about beta readers? Do you have a group of beta readers?
I do. I have an assistant. She's amazing, Jessica. And
she is. I've interacted with her to get you on this show. So she was amazing. Hail to Jessica. Okay.
No, she is great. She, you know, basically she sets up, you know, we'll put out like, for Queen's Extension, for example, I wanted a group of, beta ARC readers. And, so she worked with them, gave them the advanced copies. And as a thank you, they each got invited to spend like 30 minutes with me via Zoom or some type of, however they wanted to. And in addition to that, they also got a signed paperback.
Oh, that's such a great way to give back to them for helping you out.
Exactly. And it's like, and one of them lives probably about 40 minutes away from me. She lives in Bradenton, and we just met for coffee at the bookstore. I gave her bunches of surprises and stuff. So I hang out with her once in a while. She's probably one of my biggest fans.
You're in Florida?
Yes.
We're in Florida. Clearwater and Tampa, respectively.
Yeah, that's so funny.
We could hang out. We'll have to do this in person when COVID is over.
Oh, that'll be fun.
When the next book comes out, we will have to do this in person.
Oh, yes.
And so as a person who uses beta readers, like what kind of feedback do they normally give you? Like how in depth do they normally go? Are they doing like maybe broad strokes, or do you find like certain people do certain things that really well? Like, that this particular beta reader will find this and this one will find something else.
Jessica's good about finding a variety. So some were a little bit more detailed, what they were hoping to see or what they would like to see. And some were kind of like, just kind of very high level, and so it all varied, which is all the different perspectives I want. I don't want, the same level of feel. I want the different perspectives because audiences are always different.
No, that makes sense. Let's talk about reviews for a little bit. Do you read your reviews?
Yes and no. Sometimes I just don't.
I think that's a perfectly fine answer. Most,
a lot of the times I just don't pay attention to them. I'm very busy.
I think that's always a good thing. You don't, the reviews, as the consensus is, reviews are not for authors, they're for readers.
Yeah.
We should just not let that deter us from what our goal is as an author.
Correct.
I don't know, at least that's how I feel.
No, and that's exactly a valid point. It's I think it's made for like other people who want to like buy the book or buy the series or sit there and do that. And one of the reasons why I don't really read my reviews is probably because you hear a lot of the snarkiness people have. They say, "Oh, this person gave me a bad review." Well, it's their opinion. You can't fault somebody for their opinion, and not every book is going to please everybody. So I stay away from all that negativity. So like, with Facebook, for example, they have all the author groups you could be part of. And I'll just get to know other authors because it helps me find a book or something to read, or it helps me, point my daughter if she says, I need a book to read and I can't find one. So I'll use those tools. But it's like when I start seeing and reading, the different authors are complaining about the reviews they're getting. And it's like, I bring it into a different perspective. I'm like, you can't please everybody, and not everybody wants to read your style of writing, and they're looking at me like, well, that's not the point. I said, it is the point. It's an opinion. You cannot fault somebody for their opinion.
I completely agree with you. Even like, like a great way to test that is your favorite book, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can go on Goodreads, research your favorite book that you're just obsessed with, and there's plenty of people who dislike it. And they will go X, Y, give you the whole list. And it goes to show that we are all different. And I think at the end of the day, as much as we write for the readers, you can't like fully write in a vacuum. At some level, you have to write for your audience. But at the end of the day, you need to write what you are passionate about. Because at the end of the day, you have to be happy with what you put out.
Correct.
And then let the readers do with it, as they please. It is, they're going to like it or they're not. And it's just how it is.
Oh, exactly. And everybody has different tastes.
Mm-hmm.
It's very true. Do you review books yourself? Will you write reviews?
Yes, I do.
Will you write negative reviews?
I don't like to write them, but sometimes I've picked up a couple books where, like, for example, there was maybe too many spelling mistakes or something, but I will be constructive in my feedback.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's important because when I talk about reviews, I think, ignoring that, let me go back. A friend of mine wrote a great blog article about writing reviews.
Mhm.
And he talked about, he's an author. He's actually a co-author with me on a series, but he wrote about how to write a constructive review, because just saying you liked it or you didn't like it is actually not helpful for the author or even a reader on whether or not the book was good. It's like, what did you like about it or what didn't you like about it? When I look at reviews, I go, are they talking about spelling or grammar errors or anything like that that push the reader out of the story? Because I don't want to read those books. I don't have the time to read a book if the person didn't take the time to get it edited and fixed, because self-publishing is amazing, but the side effect of self-publishing is there is nobody watching your crap. So you can put it up there and it can be just horrible, and I don't have the time to go through somebody's crap that they didn't take the time to make digestible for a reader.
Oh, exactly. I don't have time to pull out my red pen and start scribbling.
I would even say the same about traditionally published, like, because I think you have to be, when you're looking at reviews as a reader, like if you're going to potentially read a book, you need to decide, okay, is this review based off someone's taste, or if it's like actual problematic things in a book? You know, does this author write problematic content that's, you know, can be, you know, I don't want to say like race, you know, it can be racist or anything like that. Like there's a difference. That I don't want to read something that comes off in any of those things. But if it's just a personal preference, you have to kind of decide, you know, what kind of review it is to determine, at least for me, what I want to read. Because that makes a huge difference.
Oh, yeah.
I also like looking at reviewers to see what other reviews they do. I'll stalk reviewers sometimes, and not on my books, because I find a lot of humor in anybody who says something that's not, you know, I love the reviewers that are like, I love this book. I love the reviewers that say my book meant something and it, you know, for them, and they quote it. But when they say it pissed them off or whatever, because my, you know, horror stories don't have a happy ending, so I have pissed off readers. But I always go, but you bought my book, so thank you for supporting my writing habit. I appreciate you. You gave me some money, so I'm good with that. You can, you know, be whatever. Because I think if I look for, will I be happy with the end result of the book based on the review? But I do that with anything. Like I review all the products that I buy on Amazon too, to say whether I liked them or didn't. And when they ask me the questions, like, you know, you get those, can you answer this question? I always answer the questions if I can answer the question, because I go, that's helpful, and somebody's taking their time to try to figure out if this product or this thing will work for them. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's useful, but just, you know, you're right. You might not have your audience, and that person's gone out of their way to write a review. And I go, do they always give 2-star reviews to everything? Yes, they do. Okay, cool. They are just a troll.
They're just never satisfied with anything.
Besides meeting your beta reader, have you met a lot of your fans in person?
Quite a few, actually. It was funny because I went a couple years ago up to Savannah around Halloween, and the tour guide that I had for one of the nighttime ghost tours, he was a fan. He goes, "Wait a minute, I know you." And I'm like, "How do you know me? Never been to Savannah before."
Creepy thing sinks in.
I'm going to take off my shoe and chase him with it. And he was like, no. He goes, "I'm reading your books." And he goes, "Wait, right here." I'm like, "You're in the middle of a tour." He goes, "Well, not everybody's here yet, so we got a few minutes. I got to run to my car." And he brought out the book, and he's like, "I need you to sign this." And I even took a picture with him. So it's even on the Blood Prophecy page, I've met like my fans, but it's like sometimes wherever I go, they just realize.
Oh, that's
I think
awesome.
that's awesome. That's what I call a fangirl moment, even though he's a boy. Fangirl moment, when you have somebody who's read and brings up your stuff. Do you have, this is interesting to me, when you're writing a series, I know for me, I go back and I reread the previous books so that I remember because I don't remember everything from the book that I wrote. How do you approach this? You're going into book 4. How do you approach remembering what you wrote from the previous books?
I jot down the main points when I'm done, so when I'm when I start, I at least do that. But once in a while, I'll skim through the different books as well. One of the skills that I learned coming into my freshman year in high school, they taught us for that summer was speed reading. And believe me, it pays off even today.
Wow. Yeah, because I found like fans will bring up parts to me that I don't remember. I don't remember that, like this part, and they're like, oh my God, remember that? And I'm like, yeah, no, that was great. And I'm thinking, what the fuck are they talking about? Then I'll go back to the book. Like, oh, I did write that. Okay, cool.
I have like a very extensive Bible for mine. So because I write epic fantasy, so you have to have like extensive notes, like character profiles. And what I generally do, because I have it as a 4-book series, and I try to write little synopses for each character, kind of doing an overview of what happened for them. So mine tend to be like really, really extensive notes. But do you have anything that kind of looks like that, or do you just only a small little bullet points?
I have synopsis for each book, including the novellas. And then with a lot of the book interviews that I have given, a lot of the hosts want like character interviews. And so I'll use the character interviews as like a cheat sheet to that character.
Ooh.
Character interviews. Vanessa, we need to start doing character interviews.
Yeah, that actually
Let me tell you, I
good
love
idea.
So one of the last book tours I had done just recently was a character interview. So I brought out 2 of the characters, Zaraquel and Ray, and they're teenagers. So throughout their interview, they were like, you could see the snarky attitude a teenager would have.
I have never heard of this. This is like, I kind of wonder what some of my characters would interview like. Some of them would not.
Believe me, it was entertaining.
I guess that would get you to think about it slightly differently if they're posed certain questions, right?
Yeah, and it's like a lot of the questions I got for the different characters weren't even based on the book. So I got to really think about what the character would do outside of the book.
Yeah, I've seen this. Like sometimes it'll be like, okay, sort your characters into a Hogwarts house, or if they were on social media, which platform would they choose? Twitter, Instagram, Facebook? Like which one would they would like the most? Just funky. But I think that is a really cool way to also get to know your characters. If like let's say you're starting out, because I've heard of people saying put your characters in a room and how would they interact with each other, or like put them in a bar and who would start a fight, who would try to stop it, who would try to do this. Like it's actually like a really cool, fun way to see what your characters do. And it's a great way to kind of like brainstorm. I don't know, that kind of just sparked an idea.
Oh yeah, no, it does. And it's like for the male vampires in the series, it was like one of the questions would be like, well, if you weren't with Amber, what kind of girl do you want? Of course, that's the hanging question, but
I was gonna say that and your fans are gonna be like, can you put me down? Can I down the list?
Funny responses to it. And some of my fans would pick it up like, oh my God, you're describing me.
Have you written any of your friends or maybe not friends into your stories?
That's the funniest part. There's a little bit of all of my friends in the characters. Mm-hmm. That the good and the bad. They just don't know which part. So it's like a lot of my friends from college or high school, they would be like, that sounds like something we had done in high school. And I'm like, you think so? I don't remember that.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine do that to me. She wrote me into a story, and I was reading the story, and I beta read the story, and I don't know why I didn't catch it, but I read this story, and then I'm like, wait a minute, is this character me? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, this character is a total bitch. And she's like, yeah. And then she wrote me, it's a 3-part series. I'm in the entire, and I'm like, okay, cool. Nothing. I love it because when people are like, Where did you get the inspiration for this character? She's
I
like,
feel like I know what you're talking about. If it's the
Lyra.
series, huh?
It's Lyra. And
Okay, because I edited that one book, and I was like, gosh, she's telling everyone exactly what's on her mind. I was like, this sounds like Eric.
Yep. There you go. There you go. I can't wait. I can't wait till that series is super famous and then I get called out because it's awesome. Did you put yourself in your book at all, Barb?
No.
No?
No.
No?
Have you ever put yourself in any stories?
No.
No?
Don't feel
You're like,
like
and that's never going to happen.
I'm kind of like, it's really weird. When it comes to my professional life, I work in IT. And when it comes into my professional life, I'm not shy. But in my personal life, I'm more like shy. Please don't talk about me kind of thing.
You do such a good job of shameless self-promotion, though. I can't even imagine that.
It's just, I don't know. It's just one of those things. My personality is more about like, I pay more attention to others. You know, I care about others a lot. And, you know, and that reflects in some of the things that I do as a hobby or time commitments and things like that. So it's hard for me to, you know, sit there and say, okay, let's write me in this story because, you know, then I'd be like, how am I going to really write me objectively? I can't.
Here's the cool thing. You're an author. You don't have to write yourself objectively. You can write whatever great version of yourself that you see.
Well, do you ever feel like a component, like maybe a component of you is in some of your characters? Like, let's say if a character loves crocheting, right? And it's something that you personally do. Like, do you ever feel like you put little bits of yourself into any of your characters?
A component probably, and that's where the perseverance comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't give up attitude. I will try, and I don't give up. And that's just something my parents raised me with growing up because of the childhood I had. And so that is in all of my characters, that sense of never giving up and honor and purpose.
That's awesome. That's very awesome.
Yeah, I was raised with the motto of like honor, integrity, respect, trust, and perseverance.
Oh,
I think that's amazing. What advice would you give young authors? We're coming near the end of the episode. So what advice would you give? Not young. I shouldn't say young. This is not an age-based thing. What advice? Look, I even thought of that, Vanessa. You should be impressed because I'm almost done with my alcohol. So what advice would you give authors out there?
I have a motto that I just tell everybody: put pen to paper. Just write. Put pen to paper. Doesn't matter what it is, just put pen to paper. It's a skill you need in life, but it's a good emotional outlet.
Agreed.
So just don't give up.
Very cool. Okay, shameless self-promotion. How do people find you?
Oh, through social media. You have the Instagram, the Twitter, Facebook, email, website.
And the website address is?
www.thebloodprophecy.com.
Awesome. And what is the name of book 4 that's coming out?
Rise of the Hunter.
ooh.
Rise of the Hunter. I love it. Okay. Thank you so much for being on this podcast with us. It has been really amazing. Thank you. Okay. So this has been Drinking with Authors. I'm Erica Lance.
I'm Vanessa Valiente.
We'll see you next
Barb
time.
Jones.
Spend all your time waiting for that second chance, for a break that would make it okay. There's always some reason to feel not good enough, and it's hard at the end of the day. I need some distraction. Oh, beautiful release. Memories seep through my veins and may be empty. Oh, weightless, and maybe I'll find some peace.
Lance, CEO of Four Horsemen Publications.
of your silent
Oh, and a host of Drinking with Authors. Are you a frustrated author? Is writing hard? Are you not getting the words out? We have the solution for you. The Author's Accountability Guide 2021. In it contains accountability, 4 muses, practice exercises. We even have an online community where you and your fellow writers can figure out what the heck you're doing wrong and how to fix it. Everything you need is contained in this book. I'm not only a sponsor, I'm also a writer. Find us at the Author's Accountability Guide because I know you're wondering how to make writing less hard.
lies that you make up for all that you lack. It don't make no difference. Escape one last time. It's easier to believe in this sweet madness, all this glorious sadness that brings me to my knees in the arms.
Okay. Welcome to Literary Briefs episode of Drinking with Authors. I'm your host, Erica Lance.
And
with
I'm
me
Vanessa. Oh, sorry. I jumped the gun. I'm sorry.
this is
Vanessa,
because you've been drinking. Not as much as me, but anyway, go ahead.
Vanessa Valiente.
Our guest today is Barb Jones. Super excited. The Blood Prophecy. Let's talk about what we're drinking a little bit. I am drinking ginger whiskey and peach and honey. I had to read it because that's where I'm at from a drinking standpoint. I just read the Vanessa, what are you drinking?
I'm still drinking the Warsteiner, which I will say it's an okay beer. I like German beer, but this one, it's okay. I'll give it 3 stars.
3 stars. Now we're rating
So I
beers.
feel neutral
Okay.
here.
Barb, what are you drinking?
Blue Moon, Belgian White.
Awesome. Awesome. So fans can drink along. Apparently not the 3-star beer though, Vanessa.
No.
And there goes that sponsorship down the drain.
Oh.
Just kidding, because then we'd have to drink that. So it's cool that it left. Okay. So, literary briefs, rapid fire questions. Barb, what is your favorite book of all time?
Edith Hamilton's Mythology.
Ooh.
Cool. And why is that your favorite?
It's a condensed version of the different Greek gods.
Awesome. What is your least favorite book of all time?
Oh, he's gonna not like me. I didn't like The Plantation from Chris Kuznetsky. He's a Tampa author.
Oh.
I like
okay.
his other series, the other books in his series. I just didn't like that one for some reason. It just didn't grab me.
No, that's fine. No, trust me, I wasn't judging. I talked to somebody who has the same aversion to Pride and Prejudice as I do because I don't need needle explained to me for 3 fucking chapters.
Oh,
right?
I actually have a friend who hates with a passion Atlas Shrugged, and we'll go every time we would go to the bookstore. She would pick up Ayn Rand's books and stick them in the true crime section at the Barnes and Noble because she says it's a crime that these exist. To walk away, I'm like, I am not getting like thrown out of the Barnes and Noble because they're moving their merchandise to the wrong section. But yeah, every time.
Oh my goodness. Do you when you're reading, do you finish a book always?
Yes,
No matter if it's terrible, you'll still finish it?
I will still finish it.
Oh, I can't do that. It's like my life is sucked away. I just can't. I'm like, no, I'm done. I'd throw it, but it's a Kindle, so I just move on.
This is where most of the time I will read them. And the reason why is I've had books surprise me in the last quarter of the book. And I know that that's kind of bad that you have to wait till the end, but sometimes you can have some really great endings if you just kind of like push through to the end.
True.
I don't know. Is that what drives you to finish it, or is there something else?
No, I just think it's the author put their heart into it to write it and complete it. And if I purchased it, for example, the least I could do is finish it. And then I will give like a constructive review.
She's a kind soul.
She is a
That's
kind
good.
soul. Way kinder than I am. I'm like, and next, I'm done. Do you, oh my goodness, I just lost what I was going to ask. Oh, yes. So do you have to have a happy ending, or are you okay with regardless of how the book ends?
I am okay with however it ends. I don't have to have a happy ending, and I think that just comes from the way I look at life. Not everything is going to be a picture perfect happy ending.
But are your books happy endings?
No, not always.
The children's books are, Vanessa, because we don't want to traumatize children. What do you find the most difficult to write? When you're writing something, what is the most difficult for you to put down on paper? Are you dialogue or, scenes? Like some people I talk to are very, like, they can write all the dialogue, but then everybody's like, are they in a white room by themselves? Like, what the fuck's happening around them? So, or some people write glorious, like, scenery, and they're like, are the characters talking at all? Because it's cool that you got some mountains back there with blue ridges, but so.
It's kind of funny. I would probably say the sex scenes, the intimate scenes are harder than most.
Ooh, this reminds me of our good old friend Val, who turns red every time. And sometimes we just mess with her. We'll be like, hey, Val, look, we got one of your books. And we'll read like a line. And she's like, stop it. And she just turns red. And she's like, she always tells me, like, she always feels embarrassed when she's writing where her husband's nearby. And he doesn't even know what she's doing. But the fact that she knows that she's writing a sexy scene and he's nearby, she starts getting like,
she's broken a monitor trying to shut it off when he's walked in the room. And it's hysterical because he doesn't care. He knows she writes it. So
yes, exactly.
So what about sex scenes do you feel is difficult or not comfortable or whatever the right word is for, yeah.
Well, I'm not an erotica writer, but the scenes can get pretty intense, but I don't want to cross that line. But then, part of it is also like how much is fact versus, make-believe.
Well, it depends on what the tale is doing, I suppose.
Exactly. It's like not everybody can fit in these positions, Let's be realistic.
Well, do you feel like there's certain words that you refuse to use? Especially like, I always feel like certain people have like a list of words. They're like, okay, I'm right. Even if you're not even writing erotica, like you're writing a steamy scene and you're like, no, I'm not going to use the word moist or like.
Vanessa loves the word moist, by the way. We should say moist as much as possible. Moist.
I have it on my list to delete, even if it's talking about food. Like, I don't want the word moist.
I don't really have any words that I don't use. It's, I'll just write with however it feels. So, if it's carnal sex, obviously it's going to be more carnal-like. If it's one of those romantic moments, it'll be one of those romantic scenes. I don't have a problem using the words. I just, the way I write, I want it to be very realistic and relatable to readers.
Do you, so a lot of authors too that I've talked to use dolls or sketches and stuff to do fight scenes or sex scenes. So there aren't too many arms, legs, penises, whatever the problem is in the multiple situation, because that throws a person out of a story if you're reading and then suddenly the person has like 4 arms, and you're like, what? Or how are they grabbing that? Because that would require like ridiculous, how do you approach not having things in the wrong places?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I have a friend who's a sex therapist.
Oh, that's awesome. Not everyone has those. You're lucky.
So I'm like, you're going to have to help me. We're going to play Twister or something.
I love that.
So I will have one of my best friends he and his wife, they're out there, and I'm like, you got to describe your latest like heated moment, and so he'll describe it to me, and I'm like, okay, I can deal with this. Or I use a variety of tools at my disposal, if you will. When it comes to the battle scenes, I will actually set up my iPhone and I'll record, and I'll just take one of my son's old toy swords from when he was little, and I will try to imitate the battle scene. And I'll
Well,
record.
I think that's good because those can be some of the most complex things to write. You're talking about in-depth character and stuff like that, but if you're trying to talk about a sword fight or a gun battle or even just a fisticuffs, right?
Yep.
It has to be real. You have to put the reader in it, reader immersion. But at the same time, you have to have the person not swinging 5 fists unless they just happen to have those, I suppose. And especially if you add multiple people to a battle, then you got to keep track of where everybody's stuff is, right?
Oh yeah, and it's like my son would have like action figures we didn't get rid of yet when he was little. So there's the action figures. They come out of the box.
No, I love it. I love that idea. There's some Bratz dolls that have had some very inappropriate things happen to make sure that we knew where. I like making Vanessa I found the line to make Vanessa lose it, so that was good. Bratz dolls. I'll send you photos, Vanessa. It'll be good. As a writer, what do you think your bad habits are? Like, what are your writer bad habits? So I found, in the last book that I put, my editor caught that I had changed a person's name. John and Noah. It's Noah, by the way, when anybody reads the book. But apparently I changed it to John at some point and then had to change it back to Noah. What are your bad habits?
I think sometimes I get too caught up in the point of view. So I will tend to use a lot of point of views within the chapter. So that's probably one of my bad habits, because I will take that chapter and that scene, for example, and I'll portray it from one angle, and then I want to shift it to a different person.
Do you feel like, how many POVs or maximum POVs have you ever had in one story? Because that can be very challenging if you tend to have more than two. Having that balance and making sure, is this the right character to be portraying this or explaining what's happening in the scene? Because it has to have a purpose for why you're choosing that person.
Correct. I usually try to stay with 2, but sometimes I went to 3.
3. Mm-hmm.
No,
just because that chapter was so significant and heavy, it really took 3 points of view, because it was in that particular chapter, it was like 3 different races. For example, There was a demon, a witch, and a vampire, and they were all together, but they all had a different prophecy in mind.
A demon, a witch, and a vampire walk into a bar.
It's better than changing the light bulb.
Okay, let's talk about editing for a little bit. So Vanessa, I'm going to preface that Vanessa is an editor, just so that we have forewarning when we get horribly offensive to her. I'm just kidding. What was the editing process for you like? You've had such a great experience with your publishing and stuff. What was the editing process like?
Maxine has been my editor for all of my books with World Castle. And so she knows the storyline. So that's been a big help. I don't think I would have been as successful as I am if I had multiple different editors. But because I've always had Maxine, she's been with me from the very first book in the series to the 3rd book, plus the novellas. So she knows intimately the characters, where I'm going with it.
And I'm sure like it also helps that for you working as long with her for all these books that you're not afraid, she's not afraid to tell you her true feelings about it, and then you are okay with receiving whatever her feedback is, whether you agree with it or not. And I think that's amazing, like, because I feel like a lot of people tend to think the editor's trying to change their voice or anything. It's like, no, they just want your vision, but to make it stronger and better. And that sort of sounds like the kind of relationship you have with your editor.
Correct. I look at Maxine's purpose is to take my vision and amplify it so that it is easily understood. People will follow the prophecy. They'll fall in love with the storyline. You know, her job is to really help me amplify it even more than I have already done on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had anybody dress up as your characters yet and come see you at a convention?
I had a couple people, but they did it just for a Halloween party.
Ooh. Okay.
That's very cool. I feel like that's one of the biggest compliments you can get as a writer when people want to dress as your characters.
Yeah, I think the way they wanted to do it is just because, you know, like Chloe, for example, has black hair, but, you know, when she became pregnant, it's like she ended up with a white streak. And her witch powers were being amplified by the pregnancy. So it's like they wanted to portray that. They just loved that that context I put her in. Plus, Chloe comes from the long line of witches from Salem. And so she comes from Sarah Good, one of the first witches of the Salem trials. So I did a lot of history on Sarah Good.
I was going to say, and the research continues. Have you ever gone to Salem?
Not yet.
I want to go to Salem. That's one of my bucket lists. I was actually supposed to go this year, and then there's COVID. Have you found it harder or easier or the same to write during this time?
It's been the same, but it's like, you know, I was supposed to go to Scotland this year. And so I'm pushed it to next year. I'm like, okay, hope and pray.
I was supposed to go to Ireland too in June, and that's pushed off to, see.
I was supposed to go to Ireland.
Separate trips, but.
Yeah. March for St. Patrick's. It was sad.
Yeah.
I mourned it. I mourned that trip so bad.
No, totally. But so it hasn't affected your writing as much. Are you working from home? Or are you still in the office or?
My IT career allows me to work from home before COVID, so this was nice.
So you're already used to doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're not doing COVID and stuff like that, do you do the convention circuits at all? How many in-person events do you do with your book series?
I've done a couple. Mostly it's just been small events that they would have like in Tampa at one of the smaller hotels. But it's, you know, there's a lot of logistics involved in that.
No, totally. I love meeting people at conventions and meeting the fans and stuff like that. I always think it's really interesting. Do you do public readings of your books at all?
Not of the books, but I do public speaking engagements on a variety of topics.
So getting you to go up and read your books, that hasn't happened yet?
Not yet.
Well, we're going to have to make that happen. I think that sounds like a fabulous, fabulous thing to do. So are you going to use, this is an interesting topic. Do you have a different name on your children's books than you do on your paranormal? No. Oh, wow.
That's interesting.
What about
my name?
It is your name, but a lot of times crossing genres becomes an interesting thing for fans. Are you looking at using your name when you do the historical romance?
Yes. I figured it's my name.
I just don't even care.
I just figured, you know, it's the name I was given. It's my work. I got to be proud of it. I have ownership.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we talked about your covers a little bit. How much final say do you have with your books on them going out? Like if you get the edits and stuff, how much final say do you have?
In terms of?
Well, a lot of times publishing companies, and they have the final say on what it is. Like they go, this is what we're changing it to. Do you have final say to go, no?
Yeah, I mean, she hasn't come back and changed any of the titles. She hasn't done any of that. She's like, you know, she really gives that empowerment, which is why I love World Castle. It's like, it's that empowerment feeling. And, you know, so it's like with the editing, it's, you know, Maxine, for example, will give her advice and her critique and all of that. You know, in the end, it's okay, up to me to change it or not change it. And most of the time I change it because it's constructive feedback for me to grow as an author and to be better than what I am right now.
Very
So I'm one of
cool.
those weirdos.
What about, you talked a little bit on the previous podcast about your fans. How much do your fans influence any plots in the book? Other than you need to give us more of these, how much have they influenced the actual plots in the books?
Usually not much. They like where it's going. They haven't really said, I wish you didn't do that. But I'm sure as fans read Queen's Ascension, they might be, not so happy with one of the characters, but, it is what it is.
And do your characters, because you're a pantser, do your characters guide you a lot, or do you already know where it's going? Have you gone left because the character went, I'm going to go this way with what you're doing?
I let the characters lead. So sometimes I'll start writing and I have this vision in my head, but as I get through a scene and the character went through something and I'm like, oh, you know what? I got to change this now because we took a little detour.
No, that makes sense. Do you feel like your characters talk to you? A lot of authors tell me their characters kind of talk with them, and sometimes they struggle with them to get them back on the rails from where they want them to go.
I have them sitting on my shoulder. Like Jiminy Cricket.
Oh my goodness. I love that. I love that. Okay. One of my other questions is, how avid of a reader of your genre are you? Now, because you said you used to, and then you wrote this, are you back to being an avid reader in your genre?
Not as much. I really prefer historical or historical fiction books, in addition to action. So that's probably my preferences. Once in a while I will read something from the paranormal genre, but most of the time I stick with the historical stuff.
Very cool. What about newsletter lists and stuff? You talked about talking to readers on Facebook. Do you have an active newsletter?
Yes, I do.
Very cool.
It goes out once a month, and we had just in September, with the release of Queen's Ascension in August, we announced a very exclusive contest, and this is open to the loyal fan base who have read the books, know the characters, knows what happened, to answer some questions. And the contest is really there's going to be 2 winners, and these 2 winners are going to work exclusively with me to create several characters in book 4.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going to work with Steven to kind of design the characters so that we have character art and those things. So they're going to get an in-depth working experience with my team and me.
Well, that's going to be
book 4. And not to mention they're going to get, the dedication and all that stuff. But it's open till Halloween, and then in November we'll draw the 2 winners. So there's still time to read the books, but you got to read the books to enter the contest to see how familiar you are with the series, to know the characters in order to help create some additional characters for book 4.
Wow, it's like character trivia. We can do trivia of the blood prophecy.
Yeah.
Who came up with the list of questions that you're asking to see how big of a fan they are?
I did.
Wow. I hope you picked some of your really fun questions to ask them.
I did, and it's stuff that you really have to read the books and know the characters to really answer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that is awesome. Well, very cool. Okay, well, we're coming to the end of our Literary Briefs episode. So, what is the name of the next book that's coming out?
Is Blood Prophecy 4, The Rise of the Hunter.
The Rise of the Hunter. When is that due out?
As soon as I finish it and submit it over to Karen, and then it goes through the editing process, which doesn't take long. So I'm hoping within 2 years or less.
Oh, very awesome, very awesome. But they can always sign up for your newsletter to keep up to date on the details.
Oh, yes, they do. And there's always a giveaway at least once a month.
Oh, very cool. And so tell people how to find you.
It's on Facebook for the Blood Prophecy books, Instagram, Twitter, and the website www.thebloodprophecy.com, and via email.
Awesome. You have been wonderful. Thank you so much for being
so much.
on the podcast. Very cool. Okay, well, this has been Drinking with Authors. Our guest has been Barb Jones. I'm Erica Lance.
And I'm Vanessa Valiente.
And we will see you next time.